interrupt me at any point, ask me whatever questions you want, you know, go in whatever direction you want. How many of you have never heard of Linn, don't know anything about Linn? Just you, sir? And the rest of you reasonably familiar with the company?
Just a wish.
You watched the documentary feature on YouTube?
No, I did not. No, I didn't.
They'll give you a very good understanding of the ethos of the company. Okay. So the company was formed in 1973 by my father, Gilad Tiefenbrun, and the product that started it was the product we've been talking about that this gentleman owns, the Linn LP12 turntable. So we've at least 2 LP12 owners here. You an LP12 owner?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, 3, 4. And so you understand that what has led that product to endure for the last 53 years is that my dad had the foresight to design it with a modular, upgradable architecture. So the story goes back to when my mum and dad were getting married, and they had some money, they moved into a new apartment, and they spent that wedding money on a hi-fi system because my dad felt that a house wasn't a home without a hi-fi system. The problem was that it was more expensive than the one in my grandparents' house, in my dad's parents' house, but it didn't sound as good, and he was disappointed. So he started to experiment with the speakers. At the time, the prevailing wisdom was that the speakers were the only part of the hi-fi system that mattered. And so he was an engineer, he was into music, so he was tinkering with the speakers and not getting much improvement or any improvement until in one of his experiments, he took the turntable that he had and took it outside the room and ran the cables under the closed door of the living room. And suddenly the sound through the speakers improved dramatically. And that was his aha moment, because he realized that the turntable was picking up feedback from the speakers and putting it around the system as distortion. And that having had the turntable outside the room and the door closed had cut out that feedback loop. So that's when he realized that his attention should really be on the turntable, because it shouldn't have been picking up the noise from the speakers at all. And then he started to think, well, what else is wrong with the turntable? Turntables at the time were really designed for minimizing shock impact, so the record wouldn't skip when it was bumped. And he realized actually that was the wrong principle, and actually he should design a turntable that would minimize, that would be optimized for acoustic isolation. And so that's the whole principle of the LP12, is that by focusing on the point where the needle meets the record and isolating it in as much as you can from any sources of external distortion or noise, then you can extract more information from the groove of the record. And when you do extract more information from the record, it improves the sound of any system. If you lose information at the source, at the turntable, it doesn't come back, no matter how good your amplifiers or speakers. Sounds obvious now, but at the time he was considered a maverick. Maybe still is in some quarters. And he took it around the hi-fi dealers in the UK, and one of two things happened. He would say, you know, I've got this turntable, it improves the sound of any hi-fi system. Do you want to hear it? And they might slam the door in his face and say, you're crazy, turntables don't make any difference. Or they might say, that's really interesting, come on in. And he would go in and they would set his turntable and the store's turntable up next to each other and run them through the same system, A/B demonstration. And if the dealer could hear the difference, which they invariably could, they would say, that's really great. And they might stock the product if he took it into production. So that was happening in the run-up to Linn being founded. The company was established in February '73. And he had a lot of orders. So he set up a production line. People lined up, each person building one part of the turntable. And very quickly, they were in a back order position. They weren't getting the product through quickly enough. They weren't getting the quality they needed. And so he asked the woman who was in charge of that production line to go away and build a full turntable from start to finish, which she did, and she did it much quicker, and it was perfect.
Really?
And he said, well, that's it. That's our answer. From now on, all of our Sondek LP12s will be built by one person from start to finish. And she said, but I'm the only one who knows how. And he said, that's fine. Everyone else can learn. And that remains the philosophy at Linn today. We're a learning company. The products are modular and upgradable, which allows people to work simultaneously on different parts of the LP12, in fact, the different parts of all of our products. And it means that everyone's learning all the time, embracing new technology. Still to this day, our products are all made by a skilled operator, one skilled operator from start to finish in final assembly. And their name goes on the product. So personal ownership and responsibility. So in fact, the mark of quality at Linn is actually the pride of the person who builds it. We don't even have a quality team.
That's cool.
Yeah. So from a design perspective, the products we make started with turntables and then ultimately went into speakers, amplifiers, eventually into CD players and other types of more computerized products, multi-room and things like that. And where I joined the picture is in 2003, when, I guess if I go back to Linn getting into CD players, so that'd be like late 80s, there was a big rift in the company at the time between the people who said, we've got to get into CD because that's the way the industry's going, all the new music's coming out on CD, people want to buy CD players. And the other group of people would be saying, yeah, but CD doesn't sound as good as vinyl. CD's not an upgradable platform. Linn's all about selling somebody a turntable at any point and then them being able to upgrade to the latest specification. CD doesn't meet the Linn ethos. But ultimately, the people who said Linn needed to make a CD player, as long as it could be better than other people's, they won that argument. So where I come in 2003 and joined the company, I came from more of a software technology background. And I was working in London for a company making smartphone operating systems. And at that time, about late 90s, we had a prototype 3G phone network in our office, and we were already streaming audio and video to the prototype smartphones that went on to become iPhones and Android phones and all that. But that's way before that stuff was out. But because of that, I could see what was going to happen to digital media. And so when I spoke to my dad in 2001 in one of our regular chats that we would have about life, he's in Glasgow at Linn, running Linn. I'm in London. I said, well, what's Linn up to at the moment? He said, oh, we're about to launch a new range of CD players. And I said, well, what are you doing that for? There aren't going to be any CD players in the future. And he said, oh, what are you talking about, you know? I said, oh, it's all the music's going to come from the cloud. So back then, I made an application for an early Nokia smartphone before people even knew what apps were. You know, this is 2001, 2002. I wanted to show what we could do with the Linn system. So you could connect over RS-232 and then to Bluetooth and then go to this phone, and it would show you what CD was playing. It would download the cover art and the track information from the internet, and then you could change the tracks and control it with your phone. So my dad thought that was quite interesting, and he said, I tell you what, why don't you come to CES? Linn's got a booth there, and you can show people this and see if anyone's interested. So I spent 4 days at CES. This would be probably January 2002. And I had this color screen phone, very early smartphone. And I was controlling the music on one little part of the Linn booth at the Sands. And people came, you know, customers, like dealers came, journalists came. Everyone looked at it, and they all said the same thing. Why would anybody want to control their music with a mobile phone? But by the time I did join Linn full-time in 2003, that was really where my mind was at. And I very quickly set about building a team, including some of the people I'd worked with in London, to build a streaming platform. For the reason that if you look at what Linn's all about, getting that source first, extracting the most information as you can. If we go back to that LP12 story, what could be better than playing higher quality digital than CD? Like if we're really going to fulfill the Linn vision, then it was already being recorded at far higher than CD quality. So surely Linn should be making it possible for you to experience that music at higher than CD quality. And in fact, by 2006, we'd launched our first 24-bit Studio Master download at 3 quality levels. 24-bit Studio Master, as in the original recorded quality, CD quality, and MP3. And the prediction was that we would sell probably 60% MP3, 30 to 35% CD, and 5 to 10% Studio Master. And from the beginning, customers were buying, 90% were paying $24 for the Studio Master compared to $6 for the MP3 or $15 for the CD, right? And that told us something really important because there weren't any products that could play that 20 to own the original anyway. So we knew there was a demand out there, and by the time we launched our first 24-bit player, the Climax DS, in 2007, we could tell there would be a ready-made audience for it. When I talk to kids at business school, and because there's like like one of those case studies they do at business school in Linn, I always ask them the same question, how much do you think we charged for the Climax DS in 2007? And some of them say $100. And the most kind of ambitious ones might say $1,000. And I tell them it was actually $10,000. And they can't believe it. But we sold 1,000 of those within the first year in a market that didn't even exist yet, if you know what I mean, in a market that was digital, where, digital music meant low quality, it meant Napster, it meant portability, it meant access, but it didn't mean quality. And we were redefining that market on the basis of getting people to the original recording, which for me was absolutely what we should have been doing at Linn at that time. And what I would do, which was very similar to what my dad did back in the 70s, is I would take Linn's Climax DS around and say, here's the streamer. It sounds better than a CD player. Do you want to hear it? And many, many people said, you're crazy. Streaming's low quality. They just didn't get it. And I would say, well, it's like a CD player just with nowhere to put a CD, right? Gets the data straight from the network so we can get it at full quality. I went to Japan, which is a really very traditional hi-fi market. And the older critics, the critics are kind of worshipped in Japan and have a big hierarchy that's different to anywhere else that I'm aware of in the world. And we'd have these old critics sitting there listening to our wonderful high-end streamer. This is back in 07, 08, and they would just be sitting there like this. So what did he say? This is not hi-fi. There was a real resistance to it. And we did that for years before we really broke through. The earliest adopting markets for streaming were the US, Scandinavia, and then Japan. When it did come on board, it came on board very fast. And so that's really what I did. I took Linn out of CD players. We stopped making CD players altogether in 2009. We were the first company to stop making CD players. And you might be thinking, well, there's companies today that still sell CD players, right? And people still want CD players, so why don't you sell them? Well, this is how it happened. I was doing one of those demos between the Climax DS and Linn's top CD player, the Sondex CD12. And at the end of the demo, everyone in the room was like, yeah, the streaming does sound better. And then somebody put their hand up to ask a question. I said, yes. They said, if your streamer's so good, why should I buy one of your CD players? And I fluffed my answer. I sort of said, well, we make very good CD players and they're the best CD players. But I didn't feel good about it. And I got back to the factory and I said to my team, it didn't feel right. I don't ever want to be in a situation where I'm selling something that I don't believe in. Because if you think about the streamer that we were selling in 2007, we could see it was upgradable. It could only play FLAC and WAV when we launched it, but we designed all of the technology in-house so that the software could be upgraded over time. Just like the LP12 and 73, a modular upgradable architecture. And so I truly believed and understood that it would be better for customers to buy one of our streamers. It would be a better investment. It would be future-proof. And that has borne out because anyone who bought a Climax DS from 2007 onwards has it fully upgraded to the latest spec today through software. In 2007, no Spotify, barely, no iPhone, no iPad, no Samsung phones, none of that existed. NASs were how people accessed the music and they were pretty restricted on hard drive space. Wi-Fi wasn't great in 2007. And the way we architected was to just make the player with no storage inside and none of that consumer electronics tech in it, with the Linn streaming platform, with our digital to analog conversion, focused on that one job of quality. And what that's meant is, as all of that world has improved around it, that 2007 Climax DS is now controllable from your iPhone, iPad, Samsung, computer, whatever. It now interacts with streaming services that didn't exist back then. Qobuz, Tidal, Spotify Connect, etc. The problem of network speeds has been resolved. You can get a fast enough network that you can stream 24-bit. You don't need to download anymore. In fact, we don't have that download store anymore, the one that we launched in 2006, because you don't need it. So those principles of Linn, extract the most information at the source, package it up in a modular, upgradable way for customers, as future-proof as possible, have applied to everything from the LP12 onwards. Right, let me show you some of these pictures that have traveled a long way from Scotland. So those of you who don't have a Sondek LP12, this is what it looks like. There's one up in room 481 that you can have a listen to. Every part of this product is upgradable. Plinth, bearing, power supply, tone arm, cartridge, sub-chassis, etc., etc., etc. And typically we'll launch 1 or 2 upgrades a year for the Sondek LP12. There was a period, well, I have to say, when I joined Linn, turntables were a relatively small part of the business in 2003, maybe 5% of business. Turntable and turntable upgrades. And today it's more like 25%. And I think that's thanks a lot to the fact that we are back doing all the upgrades to it, and also this vinyl revival, of course. And there's a lot more interest in vinyl today than there was when CD was dominating, right? Anyone here not have a turntable? You're the only one. That should tell you something. No. So Linn started next to Linn Park. That's where the name Linn comes from. Linn is an old Scots word, which is a natural pool of water. But today we're in our own purpose-built facility about 5 or so miles from where the company started. And you can see these cages here along in these rows. And so when my dad designed this factory, guess what? He designed it in a modular, upgradable way. So even though this factory opened over 40 years ago, the process whereby automated vehicles bring these cages into these rows, they can configure the factory however we want to build the products that are on order at that time. So even though the products we've built over the last 50 years have changed dramatically, the processes remained the same. All down this side of the factory is 5-axis machine centers and computer lathes, so we can mill and turn metal, make all of the chassis of our products. The top end of our stuff is made from machined aluminium, or aluminum as you guys might say. And we also have another area for the folded metal side, but we're making as much as we can in-house. We even have our own surface mount lines and populate our own circuit boards. We have a huge engineering team consisting of mechanical, acoustic engineers, electrical, electronic engineers, and software engineers, so we can design all of our own products, lay out our own circuit boards, and make them ourselves, which is critical. We're not doing it just because we're crazy. We are crazy, but we're not doing it just for that reason. We do all of that because we want to own and control all the key processes that affect sound quality. And what does that mean? What is sound quality? For us, sound quality is the elimination of noise and distortion on the signal path. Yeah, it's not because we have some recipe for good sound. We're simply taking the signal that originates with the music, we're taking that source, and we're trying to get it to your ears, and we're trying to lose as little as we can along the way. You can't make it better than it is as a recording, but you can certainly make it worse. So that's the instruction to our engineers: lose less. Where can we lose less? Well, everywhere. Everywhere in the process of making that product are opportunities to lose less signal, whether that's in the form of the physical construction of the product, in terms of how isolated it is from the outside world, how well it isolates power from analog, from digital inside the product, to how well the circuit boards are tracked, to how well the product is built and screwed together, right? Everywhere are opportunities to lose less.
So I have a question.
Please.
Okay, so in the world of analog, you guys decided to go all the way up the chain back to the very recording process, the vinyl lathe process, all of that, right? Very interesting. Are you considering doing that in the digital chain, going basically further upstream in order to continue to eliminate noise? So obviously you're still involved in recording and all of that, but further up in the digital chain, like switches and servers and things like that, are you guys looking at any of that to do the same thing, to eliminate noise and distortion?
So those switches and servers in a Linn system make no difference. And the reason for that is because of the way we pull data over the network. Now, I can't speak for any other hi-fi company, but we design our own clocks and our own DACs, and we pull that data. So if you think about it like a SPDIF, it's like a fire hose. A typical digital input, you're having data sprayed at you and you have to reclock it. The way a Linn system works is we are requesting that data over the network. So it comes in as we choose it to come in. That allows us to eliminate any of the issues that would arise from the incoming signal. So you could eliminate microphony on the cable potentially, and you might be better to use an optical Ethernet than a regular one. There could be good reasons for that. But as for a switch, is just a switch. Provably, you can just see exactly the same data come through that switch. So as long as you're in charge of how you clock that data, there's no difference. A server is just a server. Provably, you're getting the same ones and zeros.
So there would be no sonic difference, should be no sonic difference between the different digital inputs, for instance, on a Climax DSM.
I didn't say that, right?
Okay,
I didn't say that.
Different, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
But for the Ethernet, we pull that. Now, if it's a SPDIF, it's different. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, but the actual server is just a store of ones and zeros. So if you can get those ones and zeros, it's all the same if you're doing your job properly. If you're in charge of requesting that data and you're timing it, clocking it yourself.
So then in theory, you wouldn't be able to hear a difference between the music server software, like if you're using Rune or something else.
Well, without getting too controversial here, I like to think, when you're thinking hi-fi, some things are really important. and some things are not so important. And the way to gauge that, in my opinion, is, let's say up on the important side is your LP12 turntable. And as I said at the start, it can make any system sound better. Anything. Even very, very inexpensive other components. At the other side, let's take an Ethernet cable. It cannot make a very inexpensive system sound better. Okay, so it's much less important. Let's put furniture over there as well. Furniture can, make something a little better up at this end, but if all you needed was good furniture and you didn't need a good hi-fi system, nobody would buy a hi-fi system. So all the things that don't really make that much difference, we don't really pay much attention to them at Linn. We focus on the big issues. Extract as much information from the source as possible. Protect it throughout the signal chain, and then reproduce it as accurately as possible with minimum noise and distortion. And if it's not obvious, it's not worth it, in our opinion, or it's certainly not worth it for us, because we're trying to solve the big issues in hi-fi. And if you find yourself having to sit there while someone's turning a network switch on its side or swapping servers out, and you find yourself sitting there and, does it? I'm not sure. That is a sign. Hi-fi, when you find something that sounds better than something else, it should be obvious, it should be emotional, it should be impactful. It shouldn't be a chin-scratching, head-scratching exercise. It should be visceral. It should sound better, and if it sounds better, it is better. It should be as simple as that. So maybe someone's come up with a better server software, but how much difference does it make? Well, not as much as anything I'm going to talk to you about.
Not as much as the ability to discover new music with Rune and all the interlinks. So that's far more important than the tiny difference I hear between using, kazoo versus Rune.
Correct. So this is the original streamer we launched in 2007. This is the original download site I was telling you about, the Linn Records download site that is not in existence anymore in the same way. So the key parts of the Linn product range now, the LP12, and these are 3 very recent upgrades that we've done. The new plinth, new power supply motor control unit, new sub-chassis. And these things all are working on an axis of improvement that would come as no surprise to you. They're all based on the philosophy of the turntable. So why is the power supply so important? Because it dictates how accurately the motor spins. Why is that important? That dictates how accurately the record spins. Every record is pressed with an assumption that it will be played at precisely 33 or 45 RPM. Any faster, the pitch of the music rises, even imperceptibly. Yeah? Even any slower, the pitch falls. So the single most important thing a record player can do is spin consistently as close to the right speed as it possibly can. That's a much harder engineering challenge than many people realize. So over the years, the LP12 spins more accurately and closer to the right speed more consistently than ever before. And we even use some digital technology in here to monitor that consistent speed over time to make sure that there's never any drift or any long-term drift is corrected in the motor. The plinth, that's a better isolating plinth, and you can read about that on our website. The new sub-chassis, better isolation for the tone arm and cartridge. But the same principles, improve the acoustic isolation to extract more information from the groove of the record. Now, took this modular upgradable idea even further in 2018 with the launch of the Select streaming range. And it is physically upgradable as well as software upgradable. So when we launched it in 2018, we said, well, you can have it with or without internal amplifiers. And we offered 2 levels of DAC, a standard DAC and what we called catalyst DAC. And so as a customer, you could configure the product to how you wanted it. You could have it as a stereo streamer only with line out, or you could have the amps inside as well, and you could use it as a one box with a pair of speakers. Now, tell people something's upgradable is one thing. It takes time to actually build up the ecosystem before people understand that. But today, there are 4 different levels of DAC that you can have with a Select DSM, meaning you can buy the base model for, say, $6,500, but you could upgrade it to something all the way to $30,000 US and anything in between. So there's multiple levels of DAC. You can Biamp, Triamp, go active with Linn speakers using this unit. In fact, I was in a dealer in Atlanta day before yesterday. That's exactly what they had. They had a pair of Linn 150 loudspeakers with 3 sets of analog cabling to one of these units, which had 3 of our top-end organic DACs and 3 of our stereo amps in it. So a full active exact system in a box. And 1 pair of speakers. So really nice, simple system, but unbelievably high performance. So their upgradability, so actually the Linn range, so we have this climax level is what we say is our absolute top of the range, no holds barred. The best of all Linn technology goes first into the climax level. And if you go up to 481, you'll see we have the very top spec Climax LP12. We have the top spec Climax Streamer, the new Climax DSM, and we have the top spec Linn speakers, the Linn 360. That's our Climax level. Then you get to Select, and Select has all these different upgrade steps. And so that's maybe more like the enthusiast proposition or the future-proof one where you want to buy in at a level and leave the door open to make lots of upgrades in the years ahead. And then we have Magic, which is our entry level, which is a one-box solution. 1 box, streamer, preamp, power amp, just add speakers. So this is we have the silver version up in 481, but this is the Climax DSM as it is today in black.
So this one sounds right.
It's harder to find secondhand apparently. And this launched in April 21, which was quite a thing because it was quite hard to, in the UK anyway, have people working together around that time. And so we had all kinds of crazy shift patterns and things going on to satisfy the safety concerns of our staff and so forth. And it was back in the summer of that year, and we developed the DAC technology for this product, which we called Organic. And that's our top spec DAC, completely made in-house. It's a digital front end with our own FPGA, and then discrete back end, 16 flip-flops, all tracked and laid out on our own circuit boards. You can watch a cool video about that on our website. So we had that technology ready, but we didn't know when to launch it. And I remember having a discussion with my colleagues, what are we going to do through this period? And I said, well, why don't we launch the new Climax DSM? Why don't we aim to do that? As something that would be really inspirational for our staff and something that would be a great and fun thing to do, because going to work was one of the only things you were actually allowed to do back then. So we said, well, why don't we make coming to work fun and focus everybody on something really exceptional, much, much better than anything we've done before. And we upgraded our 5-axis machines to make that beautiful casework you see there. We brought as much of it in-house as we possibly could so that we were in charge of the supply chain, because supply chains were a mess at that time. And we launched this product in April 21 with that idea that people would say, how on earth did they manage to do that? But it really was a great rallying cry for the whole company. And launching this is, certainly one of the company's best achievements. Now, this speaker you'll see in 481 as well. You'll get to listen to that if you go up there. And we launched this in our 50th anniversary, which was in April 23. And as part of that, I invited my dad to come in and hear the speakers. He retired in 2019. But he still likes to come in and to the factory, and I like to invite him in when we have a new product to launch. So he heard these speakers. They're fully integrated. They have organic DAC per channel, so we're digital all the way to the speaker, then organic DAC for the mid, tweet, upper bass, fully digital bass system. So everything is inside the speaker. It's an intelligent network connected speaker. It knows where it is in the room, it knows where you're sitting in the room, it knows how your room's constructed, it optimizes its output for the space that it's in. It really epitomizes how far Linn has come in terms of technology over the years and expertise in the signal path. And my dad heard these speakers and he told this story. He said in 1994, Linn had just launched or was launching its new top-end system. Does anyone remember what Linn's top-end system was in 1994?
The Celtics and the Climax. Oh no, the Clouds. The Clouds, the Celtics, and the what was the preamp? It was after the the Cairn.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Carrick Numeric, Cairn, Clouds, Celtics. And a journalist had come to Linn to hear the system, and they said to my dad, wow, this is the best hi-fi system I've ever heard. This is incredible. I mean, where does Linn go from here? Like, how, it can't get any better than this. And my dad said to the journalist, he said, honestly, I think this system is maybe at 1% of what a hi-fi system is capable of. And the journalist thought he was joking, but he was deadly serious. And so he told me this story, and he turned to me and he said, congratulations, son, you've got us to 2%. See, he's proud of me, right? But the point remains, which is this complete misconception people have about hi-fi being a law of diminishing returns. It's actually the opposite, because let's say relatively going from no hi-fi system to a decent hi-fi system is a huge step. Even smaller, every perceived smaller technological breakthrough is still getting you closer to the real thing. And so the perceived differences are actually getting bigger. And you'll hear that if you go up to the suite. That where we're getting to now, because music's in all of us, because we all know inherently, because we're human, what real music sounds like, every step we make towards that is hugely significant and has a massive emotional impact on us, because we're hearing something we never heard before every time. That'd be another of my tests of a great hi-fi system. When you're listening to hi-fi, it should give you that revelatory experience, a revelation, like, how is this possible? That's how I want to feel when I'm hearing hi-fi that is purporting to be better, a new technology that's purporting to be better. I want all the lights to flash in my brain. I want it all to be felt in my heart. I want to know immediately, like, this is special. This is something I've never heard before. And it's a test I think I would recommend to you to apply if you're thinking of parting with your hard-earned money on hi-fi. We've just launched a new generation of power amplifiers. Now, the way these work is taken technology from the 360 and from the internal amplifiers in the 360 and then moved them out into these standalone amplifiers. And the key technology there is a digital technology we call adaptive bias control. And what that's doing is, normally with a Class AB amp, an engineer has to bias the transistors at the point of manufacture, and that's a one-time play. Then it sits in your home, and over time, temperature, age, the transistor bias points drift. We're now using digital technology inside these amps to monitor the bias points in real time and keep them set to the optimum all the time. That means the product will perform identically in your home from the day it ships from the factory and forever. This amplifier is designed to be used in active applications. In other words, you could have three pairs of them with a Linn speaker. So when I'm talking about eliminating noise and distortion, having amplifiers, a left and a right, that perform identically to one another is critical. You're eliminating a key source of distortion, which would be variance between left and right on your amps. Each amplifier, in this case, 4 pairs of transistor outputs, in this case 8, would have variance within it, right? These perform identically between the transistor outputs in each amplifier and across amplifiers forever. And that's why we know that these amplifiers will power any loudspeaker consistently. So there isn't this thing where a dealer has to match their favored amplifier with their favored loudspeaker and find a kind of pairing that works. This doesn't need that. These will perform consistently and identically with any loudspeaker because of this adaptive bias control technology. And so I would say that Linn over time has become more overtly a technology company. If you're looking at what distinguishes us from other hi-fi companies, yes, it's our commitment to modular upgradable products, future-proofing your investments. That's a core part of the Linn proposition. And then how the technologies play into that is by developing these different technologies, we can then roll them out as upgrades. So that's the way our engineers think. It's not just what's a cool new product to make, it's what's the technology we should be developing that has the biggest potential to lower noise and distortion in the future. So that could be a 10-year look ahead. Where are the big improvements to hi-fi systems going to come? Then we can start to research technology, and that's maybe with a 5-year horizon, we can see some new technologies coming through. Then we actually start to finish those technologies like organic or adaptive bias control and decide what products to roll them out in. And that's maybe a 2-3 year horizon to get it productized. And then it's how do we make those technologies available to existing customers as upgrades or in as many products as we can at a more affordable price. So that's how I would describe the Linn business model. And I would say the business model for us has to be in tune with our ethos. Yeah, the original ethos of my father in creating the company in that LP12, modular, upgradable, and technology being mechanical technology primarily back in the 70s, taken to 2026 and beyond, but to incorporate mechanical, electronic, and software, and across a wider product range for the purpose of lowering noise and distortion in the signal path. So same purpose, but delivered using the latest technology. Yes?
I'm sorry, and I don't mean to be controversial here.
That means you're about to be controversial.
I know, controversial. I mean, Linn's been up and down the entire chain of music from basically source to production. One thing that's been remarkably absent on what Linn has done is cables. And I was wondering what your philosophy, because it just sounds like, there's people who say that cables make a difference, people who say that cables don't make a difference. From what you're saying, Linn would, I guess, by implication means that cables aren't making that big of a difference. Is that your philosophy as this?
I have certainly heard cables make a difference. Yeah, I wouldn't dispute that at all. Cables make a difference. However, it's not at the level of difference that when we're looking at what's going to make the biggest differences,
Sure.
it's never going to they've never featured in that top 20 of things that we could work on. And of course, there's always many, many more things that you could do than you can do. And that is really my challenge in leading the business, is where do we focus? because that's the only way you make progress, right? We have to find a way to focus. So it's about choosing the technologies that make the biggest improvements. So I'm not being down on cables. I'm just saying it's not a priority for us, and there are some great cable companies out there. My dad's rule of thumb for this was, we won't do it unless we can do it better than other companies. So unless an engineer or team of engineers at Linn said, hey, we've got an amazing idea for a cable, and here's why it's going to be better than what Transparent's already doing, yeah, then we wouldn't do it. So we're not doing things purely because we could commercialize them. I mean, we do sell standard Linn cable. It's perfectly good, but we don't claim to be a cable company or be experts at cable. Yeah, I think you know yourself. You got to make choices, right, in life. So it's about trying to make the right choices and having the right guiding principles to keep us making the best choices year after year.
What's next for Linn? What can you talk about that you're working on next, if anything?
You know I can't talk about anything
I know,
at
but
all.
I have to ask every time. You're tight-lipped, you guys.
No, I've learned over the years not to talk about what we're doing next because it's unpredictable and it just disappoints people. And then I feel bad for having said that we're doing something next, and then there's a hiccup and it doesn't come for another few years, or people keep asking me, where's this thing you said was coming? So I've just got a rule. I just don't go there because, yeah, R&D is unpredictable, and especially the way we're doing it, where we're doing things that no one's done before. We just don't know. And there's so many variables in new product introduction, new product development, that there's so many things that could go wrong along the way.
Do you ever poll your customers at these type of things, asking for what they want to build next? 'Cause I think you guys could do a hell of a headphone amp.
No,
Actually,
we don't pull our customers.
Maybe that's a blind spot for you guys. Is you need to get into the world of headphones and like nurture all these up and coming audiophiles,
Yeah.
so that they become Linn customers now.
It's certainly a conversation that has been had at Linn many, many times. But every time we end up at the same place. We are not experts in headphones. And we're not experts in manufacturing the kind of parts that go into headphones either. We don't have the processes to do that. So it comes back to this question of focus. And the headphone amplifier market is interesting. The Select DSM is a headphone amplifier in it. You can plug your headphones into a Linn system. Again, it's just maybe not something that we see as being a big advantage for us, something that we'd be especially better at than other companies. We have integrated headphone amps. It's just it's just business choices, right?
Sure, I understand.
Yeah. But on the question of polling customers, there was certainly nobody that told us they wanted a $10,000 streamer in 2007. So you have to watch that, because what I'm describing to you in terms of that horizon scanning, looking 10 years ahead, that's a leadership proposition. And that's our job as experts, to be the ones to know what's going to make the biggest difference to the signal path. What's going to let you experience music at home at a level that you didn't know or didn't realize was possible or was unobtainable before. So it isn't just about saying, hey, what would be a cool product that you would like from Linn? I feel we have more of a responsibility on that, which is to look into the future and think about what you want or what will make the biggest improvement to your lives as audiophiles down the line.
It's very Steve Jobs of you.
I think it's just a classic leadership position to take, and it's why Linn's still here after 53 years and still independent. Yeah, it's still an independent business.
That's why Apple's still around.
Slides. I'll make it quicker, I promise. The longevity of your electronics, again, my Linn is from that I bought from my friend is from 1989. He's the original. The Lingo power supply, never been touched. You push the button, I leave it on 24/7. You put no, it's so wrong. It basically runs at 33 and a third at 45, you know, and all the Linnisms are in it, but it just You put the LP on it, I got an optical cartridge, all you hear is music, you know. And some of my friends will argue, like, I've got electrostatic speakers. Yeah, Joe, your system sounds amazing, but there's a problem. I said, what? I can hear everything now. Just do it. You know?
That's great. I might have built that lingo. I spent several months in my teens building lingos in the factory. So I said I joined Linn in 03, but I also worked there as a kid. You know, I was really into it, even from like the age of 13, 14. Built my first Axis turntable, CAN speakers, a little Nate integrated pre-power.
On any of the stickers?
Yes.
It is? Oh, nice.
Yeah, very valuable. And I've even had my kids work in the factory. So one of my kids was building LP12s. Her name's Sophie, and she'd been building LP12s for the summer. And I was out in Dallas after Expona last year, and I'd done a 40th anniversary event at Dallas Audio Concepts, and then we went to dinner. And I think maybe the staff had sort of got to know me a bit by then, and one of them said, "Hey, did your daughter build, like, do you have a daughter? Is Sophie Tiefenbrun your daughter?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Did she build an LP12 like over the summer?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "We've got one." I said, "Oh, that's great." I felt so proud. And then he showed me a photo, and it had the builder's plaque on upside down.
You're grounded.
So it's definitely a one-off. That's cool.
That's a collectible.
Yeah.
Great. Now I'm gonna go home, open up the lingo, and look for your.
Good. So for any of you who want to hear these products I've been talking about, I'll be in 481 for a lot of today. I'll be in and out, but I'll be in quite a bit. Got Giovanni, Gino from Front Row Theatre at the back here. It's Front Row's room, and they've kindly hosted the room here. And I'd be happy to give any of you a demo and talk further. So thank you very much for coming along.
Very good.